Well, hello to all of my Lighthouse friends. This is our children's ministry here at Christ Community. And this summer we have been studying the life of Joseph. If you've missed our lessons, you can go back and look at our old ones. You can do that by scrolling through our Facebook page. But the easiest way to do that is to go to our church YouTube channel. That is CCEFC. And then once you're there, you can look for the playlist tab and then select the Lighthouse Friends playlist, and then they're just all going to be there. We have them tagged so that you can easily click View Full Playlist and you can scroll through the Lighthouse Friends videos. Of course, if you have any questions, just let me know. I can help you out. Well, let's get into our lesson about Joseph. Well, let me start with a question. Have you ever had somebody just totally miss something good that you did? Maybe you worked really hard on something, a school project maybe, and you were really proud of yourself, but nobody said, "Hey, you did a good job." Maybe you have been really excited about giving something to a friend, something that you thought was special, and you wanted to give it to somebody that you cared about it, but when you gave it to them, they really didn't act like they cared. Or maybe you did something for someone and they just never said thank you. Well, it is hard when we don't get the respect and the recognition that we deserve. It kind of feels like we are being forgotten. Well, as we continue the story of Joseph today, we see that he knew what it was like to be forgotten. Okay, remember last week we learned that Joseph got sent to jail. He had been working in Potiphar's house, and he became the chief servant in Potiphar's house. He kept rising up, and Potiphar's wife tried to get Joseph to do something that Joseph wasn't allowed to do. And even though Joseph didn't do it and he did the right thing, Potiphar's wife lied about Joseph and got him thrown into prison. So we pick up the story today in prison, and Joseph is here, and you see the bars in the window. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when we think about prison, we think about just staying in kind of a small prison cell, nothing really to do, and just staying there all day long. And that can certainly be part of it. A person who is in prison doesn't have freedom, and they can't just get up and go when they want. They can't choose what they're going to do. They don't have much, and oftentimes they are locked up. But they don't just sit in their cell and do nothing all day, especially in Joseph's day and the prison that Joseph was in. Prisoners had to do work, and they had jobs to do. And what we find as we read in the Bible is that Joseph performed so well in the tasks that he was given that he began to rise up in status within the prison. And so the chief jailer, or the warden, began to give Joseph more and more responsibility, and with that came more privileges. And pretty soon, Joseph had performed so well and proven himself so much that the warden put Joseph in charge of everything in the whole prison and all the prisoners. Now, Joseph was still a prisoner, but now he had more responsibility and he was the one who was in charge. And listen to this. The Bible actually says that the warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Now, does that sound familiar? Now, does that remind you of anything from last week? Remember, in Potiphar's house, Joseph kept being given more and more responsibility and was trusted more and more, such that he became second only to Potiphar in that house. And it said that Potiphar, the only thing that Potiphar had to worry about, you remember what it was? It was what he was going to eat. And so in the same way here in prison, the warden didn't have to worry about anything that was put under Joseph's care because he was capable and he was trustworthy. And because God gave him success in whatever Joseph did. Even though Joseph keeps getting put in these bad situations, God is with Joseph and continues to allow him to succeed wherever he goes. Well, our story today involves two prominent officials from Pharaoh's house. The chief baker and the chief cupbearer. Now these were very important jobs because they served Pharaoh himself. And the chief baker would have been in charge of the kitchen and preparing the meals for Pharaoh, but also the meals for any special dinners that might be had there in Pharaoh's house. Governmental affairs as well. And the chief cupbearer, he was in charge of selecting all the drinks and making sure that they were the highest quality and taking care of them. Now both of these positions needed to have somebody who could be trusted, because these positions, the baker and the cupbearer, they also had to make sure that nobody was going to try to poison Pharaoh. Well, something happened, and both of these servants displeased Pharaoh, and so he sent them to prison. And they got sent to the same location as Joseph. And after a while, both of them had a dream, but they didn't know what it meant. And one day Joseph came to them, and he could see that they were kind of dejected, kind of feeling sad and sorry. And so he asked them what was going on, and they said, well, we both had a dream, but we don't know what it means. Now, do you remember that Joseph had a couple of dreams? A couple of lessons ago, we learned about Joseph's dreams. And remember, his dreams made his brothers angry with him. And in fact, when Joseph came to his brothers in the field, how did they greet him? Do you remember what they said? They said, "Look, here comes that dreamer." So now the cupbearer and the baker have a dream, and they come to Joseph, and they tell Joseph their dream. And Joseph says that the Lord will help him to understand what their dream is. Well, the cupbearer says his dream first. He says, "In my dream, I saw a vine." This is going to represent his dream here. "I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. And as soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes." So there we have some grapes there. I don't know if you guys like to eat grapes, but we like to eat grapes. And in fact, Ezra, our youngest, he has a funny name for grapes. He calls them juice berries. And I think that's really cute. And I think that's a good name for grapes, juice berries, because they're so juicy, right? Well, grapes are what you make wine into. You start with grapes, and you start with grape juice, and then it ferments and it becomes wine. And so the cupbearer is having a dream about these branches that bud and turn into grapes. And then he says this, he says, "And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. And I took the grapes and I squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I put the cup in his hand." And Joseph said, this is what that means. "The 3 branches are 3 days. And within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head," that means bring you out of prison, "and restore you to your position. And you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand just as you used to when you were his cupbearer. But," he says, "when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison, for I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." And that's true, right? We know Joseph was sold by his brothers, he was put in prison by being falsely accused, and he really hasn't done anything wrong. Well, when the baker saw that the cupbearer had a favorable interpretation to his dream, he decided to tell Joseph his dream. But for him, the result was just the opposite. Whereas the cupbearer was going to be restored to his position, the chief baker was going to be executed. And that's exactly what happened. Within 3 days, the chief cupbearer was restored to being one of Pharaoh's servants, and the chief baker was executed. But what happened was, the cupbearer, do you remember what Joseph said to the cupbearer? He said, "But remember me. And when all goes well with you, remember me and tell Pharaoh about me. Help get me out of this prison that I'm in." But the cupbearer didn't remember Joseph. He didn't tell Pharaoh about Joseph and about the person who was running the prison very well, and about the person who had who God helped to interpret dreams. Well, even though the cupbearer forgot about Joseph, God never forgot about Joseph. And we see that each step of the way in Joseph's life. No matter what happens to Joseph, no matter how he's mistreated, whether he's betrayed, whether he's lied about, or whether he's forgotten, God never leaves him, and God never forsakes him. Well, we will see that as we go forward next week, even though the chief cupbearer forgot about Joseph for a while, he will soon be reminded. And we'll talk about that next week when Pharaoh has a dream and Joseph gets brought in to interpret that dream with the Lord's help. I hope you guys are having a great week. Thanks for stopping by. Let me know if you watched the video. That way I can see who's been here. And have a great week. We'll see you next week. Bye.